that song, that hymn song, in our confession, that we would rather have Jesus than anything as this world can afford. Let's continue to glorify God and really worship Him in spirit and in truth, and proclaim His goodness in this place as we sing this song. The splendor of a king, golden majesty, let all the earth rejoice, all the So this time, we will call on our senior pastor, Kim, to give us the message.
Good morning.
Morning.
So, shall we open our Bible to the book of Genesis, chapter 48, verses 14 through 16. So, Genesis 48, verses 14 through 16. Let me go ahead and read. It says, "And Israel stretched out his right hand and laid it on the head of Ephraim, who was the younger, and his left hand on the head of Manasseh, crossing his hands. For Manasseh was the firstborn. And he blessed Joseph and said, The God before whom my fathers Abraham and Isaac walked, the God who has been my shepherd all my life long, to this day, and the angel who has redeemed me from all evil, bless the hosts. And in them let my name be carried on, and the name of my father Abraham and Isaac, and let them grow into a multitude in the midst of the earth." So finally, Joseph's passing is coming close. 147 years of eventful life is coming to an end. And we spent a lot of time with the life of Joseph and Jacob now, right? Considering Joseph's life counts as Jacob's. So now we see him blessing the two sons of Joseph in chapter 48, and he blesses his own sons in chapter 49, and then he dies. And then before, Jacob said to Pharaoh that he led a very difficult life. But to Joseph, he calls that very same life a blessing. And he's talking about the time when, if you read the whole chapter, he talks about the time when God appeared to him at Luz, which is Bethel, and how like when he was running away from Laban, and he calls his life difficult, right? But he also at the same time calls it blessed, and he wishes his blessings to be passed down to Joseph and his children, right? And to the 12 tribes of Israel. He passes down his blessings to his children because he knew what true blessings was. I mean, he himself said that this was a difficult life. Why would you want to pass it down to your children? But he knew that was a blessing. So he had learned that his greed and his ambition being denied and him being humbled was a blessing. I mean, he had learned that true blessing is the entire journey of faith that led him to become who he is now at this point, obedient and dependent on God. So although it was difficult, he knew this was what it meant to be blessed. So this is what he had learned through his entire life here on earth. He concluded that his own life was a blessing. A very, very difficult life that he led. He knew that was a blessing. And now he's mustering up his last breath, last strength to sit up and to bless Joseph's sons. And the book of Hebrews also gives us an account of the very same scene. In Hebrews 11:21 it says, "By faith, Jacob, when he was dying, blessed each of Joseph's sons and worshipped as he leaned on the top of his staff." So we don't find this in today's passage, but the book of Hebrews says this. It is referring to a specific staff because in Hebrew you'll find an article in front of the word staff. The word ha is found in front of the word staff. So he's referring to a specific staff, the very staff that he had to carry with him after he wrestled with God and his socket bone was struck. So he leaned on this staff and worshipped God. So his blessings and this staff are somehow related. Right? That his blessing was not being in good health, being able to walk freely, or going wherever he pleases, but rather leaning on the staff, which symbolizes God's strength. So that's what he calls blessing. And so he's leaning on that staff, taking baby steps to follow God's guidance. For Jacob, this was a blessing. So he may not have the same physical strength to do whatever he wanted, but he depended on God and obeyed his commands. And this is what he considered blessing. And for that, he worshiped God. The very fact that he can completely rely on God. And Hebrews 11, as you all know, is a chapter on faith. Right? So that which is recorded as faith of Jacob in Hebrews 11 is what we read in today's text. Leaning on his staff and blessing Joseph's sons. Of all the things that have happened in Jacob's life, the author of Hebrews points to this specific passage and calls this faith. Interesting, right? So this was the peak, the pinnacle of Jacob's faith. I mean, he had been through so much, but this is what the Bible records as faith. And same is the case with Joseph. The only thing that is recorded as Joseph's faith in this chapter of faith is when he asked his children to bring his remains to Canaan. None of the other things. Of all the great things that Joseph did, the only thing that's recorded as faith in Hebrews 11 is when he asked that his remains be brought to Canaan. So what the Bible calls faith is quite different, right? So we need to understand correctly what it is that the Bible calls faith. The true blessing is when, by faith, you are denied, and when God has his ways in your life. It's being able to admit that God is always right. It's not when your wishes come true. The Bible doesn't call that blessing. Our wishes and ambitions are full of selfish motives. Right? It's not good when all your wishes come true. I know this is where a lot of Christians get frustrated. Right? You devote yourself to God and to the church, wanting your wishes to come true, that God will somehow grant your wishes. So you pray and pray. And when they don't come true, you begin to wonder and you begin to complain. What's going on? But think about it. If all your wishes did come true, if you actually became exactly the kind of person you wanted to be, would you still trust God? Think about that. Would you still depend on Him when you're on the top of the world with everything that you want in your life? No. See, we're so self-seeking, we're so self-important, we're so self-glorifying that you will not, you will try to give all the credit for your accomplishments to yourself. Say, this is all me. I did this. You won't rely on God, but rather rely on your own strength and abilities. I can do this. It's my hand that made all this accomplishments. So that's why God takes away our strength at times. And this is what the Bible calls blessings, when He takes away your strength. So imagine what would happen if everyone's wishes, all the Christians, they all pray to God and all their prayers are granted. All their wishes came true. What would happen in this world? It's going to be chaos. Think about it. Oh, like you have this enemy. Oh God, I wish he's just dead. Then he dies next day. I mean, there's World Cup going on, right? Different countries praying, God, please let my country win. What should God do? So you have to understand that today's narrative revolves around the whole concept of blessings. What true blessings? So Jacob blesses Joseph's two sons with his hands crossed. He blesses the younger with his right hand, and Joseph isn't happy about this. But Jacob, he knows his father Isaac also wanted to bless Esau over Jacob, right? And all the trouble that it had caused. He knows that. And he himself was the one who stole the blessing and ran away. So Jacob now praying this way, it has a very significant meaning for him. Now think about it. Is Ephraim particularly better than Manasseh? No. But we see this pattern continuously in the Bible. For no apparent reason, God chooses not the legitimate firstborn, right? So those who are actually born first, but the ones who you never expected. Right? It was Abel over Cain, Isaac over Ishmael, Jacob over Esau, David over all the other brothers. Right? Again, Solomon over others. So God chose Moses over his older brother Aaron. Joseph received the right of the firstborn over Reuben. So there are certain things that just look right to us, that align with our expectations, but God does not work that way. Right? See, people expected the Messiah to be a powerful military and political king, a military hero, a political genius, but he came to a manger as a carpenter's son. So, and he wasn't a good-looking man either, right? According to Isaiah 53, he was very, very ugly, if you have to know. That's the biblical record. So unlike anything we expected. So why doesn't Jesus look like King Saul, right? Who was like head taller than the rest? He looked like a king. And then he dies on the cross. It goes against all our expectations. And that's why everyone turned against Jesus. And sadly, he wasn't able to make any true disciples during his earth ministry. Did it ever occur to you that none of the disciples actually believed in Jesus while he was still on earth? It was only after the Holy Spirit was poured upon them that they finally came to realize. So God works so different. Even during the early church, the gospel was spread not in grandeur, but in suffering and persecution. So Paul even calls his gospel foolishness. So if you think about it, it is a foolish message. I mean, 2,000 years ago, a baby was born of a virgin in Palestine. You find that believable? Think about that. And he's the Son of God. Why do we who live in Asia, like East Asia, Southeast Asia, why do you have to believe in that God? Right? It's around the same time when Jesus was born. This is around the same time one of our Korean founders of this Korean nation was born, who was allegedly hatched out of an egg. So it's a ridiculous story, right? But how is this story of Christ any different? That's why Paul calls it foolishness. But that's how God works. So for Joseph, it was only right that Manasseh, the firstborn, received the blessing of the firstborn. But God turned this around. Not because Manasseh was inferior. I mean, Jacob wasn't any better than Esau either, right? It's simply to show that God's works doesn't always align with our expectations. God is sovereign. He works according to his own will, not by our expectations. And you would think that the church would need a lot of power and wealth to do God's work on earth. But that's never the case. There's never been a time when God's kingdom was expanded through earthly riches and power. If anything, the church became corrupt with much wealth and power. And this is repeated in church history. But sometimes we simply cannot let go of our expectations. We expect God to work in certain ways that are desirable to us. Okay? But again, God turns everything upside down. See, our ways don't work with God. And it's all to God. He's sovereign and he's always right. even though it may appear to be foolish in our eyes. And this is what God is teaching His people. That He's right. And He does this repeatedly until we finally realize that God's way is right. This is what Jacob had realized. And in today's text, we see why God chose the younger. In Genesis 48, verse 19, it says, "But his father refused and said, I know, my son, I know. He also shall become a people, and he also shall be great. Nevertheless, the younger brother shall be greater than he, and his offspring shall become a multitude of nations." Why is the younger greater? Why is the younger greater? Because that's how it works in God's kingdom. Turn to the book of Mark, chapter 9, verse 35. Jesus says this, "If anyone would be first, he must be last of all your servants. Last of all and servants of all." See, God is not trying to prove to Joseph that Ephraim is better. No. Rather, in God's kingdom, your efforts, your qualifications don't play a part. But just because you're stronger or have more does not mean that you win. You know, Jacob thought at one point this was the way to win. Right? So he would do anything he can to take possession of what he wanted. He stole his brother's birthright. He made Rachel his wife. He got a lot of flocks, right? They even stole the teraphims, the guardian god of Laban's house. He would do anything. When it comes to his personal gain, he wouldn't hesitate. That was the kind of guy. And that's why God had to train him and discipline him. See, you have to understand that the nation of Israel, right? Because Jacob is Israel. The nation of Israel, they even built statues of pagan gods in God's temple. Did you know that? I mean, they wanted God's blessing, but they also wanted all the material gain and protections that other gods provide. So they would build the statues of other gods in God's temple. So they worship Baal, they worship Asherah. But God keeps disciplining Jacob. He disciplines Israel. Because true blessing is not getting what you want. Rather, it is you becoming smaller. It is you being humbled and denied. It is you becoming obedient to God. And to teach this lesson, Jacob puts his right hand on Ephraim's head and left on Manasseh's. And Jacob is now blessing his grandchildren, who later became his, right? And that's why he talks about the time when he received his blessings in Luz, Bethel. Because to be smaller is to be blessed. I mean, Jesus tells the same thing to his disciples in Matthew 23, verse 12. It says this, "Whoever exalts himself will be humbled, and whoever humbles himself will be exalted." This is the kingdom way. That's why his kingdom citizens grow to be humble. And the Bible calls this blessing. And the life of Jesus was a perfect example of this. He was poor, he wasn't very good looking, he was hated, he was persecuted. He eventually died on the cross and offered his life. But this is the King of heaven. This is the King of heaven. And God exalted his name above all names. So this is what it means to be exalted. It was through the humility and servitude of Jesus that we have gained new life. And this is how God's kingdom expands. So same is the case with our evangelism. I mean, you don't preach the gospel by telling people that if you believe in Jesus, you'll be powerful, you'll be rich, all your wishes will come true. See, never once in history did true evangelism take place this way. You have to understand this. God expands his kingdom as God's people humbles themselves and serve others in love. And this is how we're going to be living our eternity in heaven. You have to understand this. And that's what it means to be happy, to serve and to love. And heaven is where you love others wholeheartedly, and others love you the same way. See, heaven is where you will see the love of God and love of neighbors fully realized. And the love that we're talking about here, this is a selfless love, self-giving, self-sacrificing love. And if everyone loves each other this way, I can't imagine there being any problems, right? So today's text teaches us this principle of heaven. Now Jacob says that he will take Joseph's 2 sons as his own. That's kind of weird, right? It's like my dad telling me, all your 3 daughters are mine. But I have to understand that, and so I mean, and they, the 2 sons of Joseph becomes now the 2 members of the 12 tribes of Israel. Right? So they will be counted as 12 tribes of Israel. So, which was supposed to be a place for Joseph. But he's forfeited, and his 2 sons take his place. What is this about? Again, you have to understand that continuously Joseph is a type of Jesus Christ. It is through his sacrifice, Joseph's sacrifice, that those who are from him become 12 tribes of Israel, which symbolizes God's people. Because Joseph is out, those who are from him, those who are in Christ, becomes 12 tribes of Israel, God's people. Jesus' life of humility and servitude saved all God's people. And we're seeing this spiritual mystery through Joseph. And it's not only Jesus who lives like this. How about the disciples? I mean, they all have wrong motives to begin with. Remember, the night before Jesus was crucified, they were asking, who's greater in your kingdom? Right? One of the mothers, came to request the highest positions for her sons. So this shows that even the disciples had the same expectations of Jesus as everyone else. They had the earthly expectation. They thought that Jesus would destroy Rome and rise to be the most powerful king that they have ever seen. And when that happens, they thought that Jesus would give them some important positions in his government. So this mother came, right? Because that's what mothers do, right? The mothers want the best for their children. So she came, Jesus, when your kingdom comes, can my 2 sons sit on your right and left? And then it says that this request made other disciples furious. Why? Because they all wanted the same thing. So aren't they just like us? Right? And this is exactly why God shatters this old nature within us through our journey of faith. So they will be humble. So when they reach heaven, they will be exalted. And eventually, all the disciples of Jesus, they followed the footsteps of Jesus and led a life of humility and servitude too. So this is the life of the true saints. And this is what the Bible calls true blessing. It's always about our heavenly life, not the earthly life. And we see this in today's text also. Turn to verses 21 and 22. It says, Then Israel said to Joseph, Behold, I am about to die, but God will be with you, and will bring you again to the land of your fathers. Moreover, I have given to you rather than to your brothers one mountain slope that I took from the hand of Amorites with my sword and with my bow. What's Jacob talking about here? He's about to die, and he promises his children like a land in Canaan that he himself never owned. It's not even his land. And later, Joshua does the same thing. They entered into the land of Canaan, and he distributes the land when all these lands are already occupied. They hadn't been conquered yet. the land was still being inhabited by the Canaanites. But they had a sure faith that this land belongs to them. Because Canaan symbolizes God's kingdom. They knew that they will inherit God's kingdom. Because God promised it. No other reason, God promised it. So even if Jacob is dying now, and he himself will not inherit that kingdom, and he will not go to Canaan, but he knew that this promise will be fulfilled. And this is the faith that we too, as Christians, must have. We know that we will absolutely inherit the spiritual Canaan, the new heaven and earth. And this is the hope of eternal life that we have as believers. And this faith makes us not fear even death. Because we saints are filled with this hope. And it is because of this hope that we continue to strive for heavenly way of life here on this earth. We seek to be humble. We deny ourselves. We lose. We forgive. We serve and sacrifice ourselves. We do this to show the world that our hope is in heaven, not here. But of course, this is extremely difficult. And in fact, impossible with our own strength. So we rely on Him who lives within us. We depend on the strength of Jesus Christ. Because if you try on your own, right, you'll only be disappointed. You'll be discouraged. But that's when you learn to surrender yourself and completely rely on Jesus. Relying on His grace. See, many times the reason why many Christians do not feel the need to surrender themselves and rely on Jesus is because they don't even try. But when you actually try, when you really try, you will realize how hopeless your own efforts are. You try to deny yourself, you try to surrender yourself, you actually try it, you'll learn, man, this is impossible with me. But it is only then that you it is only then, like only when you actually try and realize how hopeless your efforts are, that you will actually deny yourself. I mean, this was the case with many fathers of faith. They knew this mystery and they tried really, really hard. Like Jonathan Edwards, Martin Lloyd-Jones, Richard Baxter, and there are so many people. And for instance, Jonathan Edwards, he kept a checklist his entire life, ever since he was young, to put into practice his Christian faith. He tried and tried until he realized this is completely impossible with him. It is then he truly held on to grace. It is then he knew the meaning of grace. And this is what you will be denied, and Christ in you will begin to lead your life. But the problem is, many people try to skip this process, skip this step. And they just say, I'll just rely on God's grace. Yes, that's easy. You have to understand, that's only brushing the surface of it. It's only like brushing the surface of what it means to be a Christian. See, God does not judge us based on how much knowledge or wealth or power we acquire. No, these are useless in God's kingdom. What God looks at is how much aligned you are to God's will. How holy and blameless you are. How much you obey God. And that's why I keep telling you, try it. Work out your salvation with fear and trembling. Do it. You will know it's impossible. It is then you will completely deny yourself and hold on to His saving grace and trust Him. So today we see Jacob blessing his children, right? And it makes me kind of think twice how I must raise my kids too. You know, being a father, Jacob calls his life full of struggle and trouble a blessing. And I'm not sure if I'm teaching this to my kids enough. Like, maybe I should teach them it's okay not to be the smartest kid in class. It's okay even if you don't become very successful or achieve your dreams, right? You don't have to be famous or highly regarded by everyone. See, maybe I should teach them humility more, right? obedience more, self-denial more. Maybe teach them forgiveness, self-giving love, and sacrifice. Because this is the heavenly way of life. But I think and sometimes feel like I'm teaching them to win. Although not explicitly, but that's kind of what I want, like in the back of my mind. I still want my kids to be better, to win, right? And to strive to maximize their potential to be the best they can be. That they have to be smart, right? I mean, now this time and age, you don't have to be so smart, right? You can access any knowledge with a click now. So that's not what's important now. See, we should learn to fear God and teach our kids to fear God too. We have to pass down to our children the true blessings like Jacob did. I mean, some of you probably don't taught children. That's far away. So you have to practice as early as now to be able to do that later. See, to be able to pass down this blessing, to tell his children, like Jacob, his difficult, tough life that he had led. And now he's telling his children, this is true blessing. I want you to have the same. Can you actually tell your children that? Even if his life was full of suffering and difficulties. Even if it is a life of having to lean on a staff all your life. But Jacob knew this was a true blessing. And he had a very strong conviction about this, that he did not hesitate. I mean, like this is, I've told you this several times, like my dad, he always prayed that I'll be an evangelist like Paul. But he would always add, there's an addendum. But if you can, exclude, like take out all the sufferings, that would be great. No, it's a package deal. You have to understand that, right? But so do you actually want to be like Apostle Paul? I mean, we say that a lot, right? It means having to suffer and be persecuted. Are you sure that's what you want? But because Jacob knew that this was a blessing, he now passes this down to his children. Sorry. Suffer. But this is a life of trusting God and relying on Him. And now He's passing it down to His children. Live like this. Live like how I live. This is a true blessing. And I believe this is what we also must teach our children and our remnants here. Right? And how will they be salt and light when they are not any different? So I want you to really rethink this whole concept of what it means to be blessed. What it means to live your life as kingdom citizens here on this earth. And having expectations that are completely upside down. And still being able to trust and believe with a strong conviction that this is a blessing. To a point where you have an assurance, okay, this is what I want my children to have. And I think that will be a life of true victory as saints here on this earth. And I pray that you will strive for this and hopefully be able to tell your children too. This life of suffering and struggle and troubles, I pass it down to you because this is a blessing. Surrendering yourself and denying yourself to. So let's close in prayer. Dear Father, we thank you for giving us this wonderful time to come before you. We thank you for reminding us once again what true blessing really is. We ask that you continue to work in our midst. Give us the conviction and the assurance that what you have to offer to us is the best we can expect from you. And that what you're doing, even though we may not be able to understand it at the moment now, is the best for us. Lord, help us to have new set of eyes to see what true blessings really is. And allow us, Lord, to continue to seek it and strive forward during our earthly journey. We thank you and pray in Jesus Christ.
Amen. We're able to receive so much grace. Can you tap the person beside you? Can you tap? Na-bless ka ba? Ask the question. Were you blessed? I think it's really a good time to have this forum. And I want us to repeat these words. Heavenly way of life is the right way to live. Can you tell that to yourself? Heavenly way of life is the right way to live. Today we receive so much grace about the message about the blessing of Joseph's sons through Jacob. And we know this the entire time that everything that we have learned is about the account of Jacob. And from the last week's message, what I really got is that God really prepares something better for His people. But we always miss one thing. That is surrender. Sometimes it's hard for us to surrender ourselves before God. But as Pastor said a while ago, we should give it a try. Ask ourselves, when was the last time we surrendered to God? When was the last time we surrendered to Him? Because in surrendering, there is victory. Do you believe that when you surrender yourself to God, you will be victorious? Victory is not about getting what you want, getting your dreams, or being at the top of this world. But surrendering before God is what true victory in worship is. And I pray that we as a church would aim this kind of victory. We would seek God in heaven. Gusto ko yung heavenly mindset is that we invest ourselves in this world not because we want to attain so much, to conquer many lands, to be rich, to be powerful, but we invest ourselves in this world so that in heaven we will have our reward. I pray that we, as salt and light in this world, will dare to be different. I know it's hard, especially tomorrow. It's Monday, it's work again. I pray that we would really dare to be different. Because in surrendering before God, nothing can go wrong. Like what I always say, when we surrender our will before God, there is grace. And when there is grace, there is peace. I pray that we, as Philippines Antioch Church, would really have that strength and really seek what true blessing is. And that true blessing is really surrendering and denying ourselves. So let's take this time to pray. Maybe call out Pastor Gino.
Let's pray. May the grace of our Lord Jesus Christ, and the great love of God the Father, and the fellowship of the Holy Spirit be upon the heads of all your children who desire to align themselves with your will, with nine always forevermore. Amen. Alright, so we will have a time of forum, and then we'll have our second service.